Welcome back to another episode of Those Two Dudes podcast. It's that dude, Josh.
That's that dude, Ruben.
Appreciate y'all hopping in. We're in full spring mode, March Madness. Our brackets are already busted. Really no need to talk about that anymore. We do have a special guest, though, in today's episode. We got that dude, Tucker. This dude is going to he's our New England sports correspondent, all things New England sports. Super pumped to have Tucker on. Appreciate you hopping on today, Tucker.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Happy to be here and look forward to chatting with you guys a little bit today about Boston sports and whatever else you guys got for me. So thanks for having me on.
You know, the tournament just started. The first round just ended. We're already getting into the second round. That's why it's March Madness, man. There's been so many upsets. I'm pretty sure through ESPN of the 14 plus million brackets that have been submitted, there are 0 that are perfect, and we just got through the first round. My one personal takeaway from this first round is with UT losing, UT Longhorns, Shaka Smart, third seed. I believe he's coach's last game. I thought he had to get to the Sweet 16 to save his coaching job. We lost in the first round to 14 seed Abilene Christian, who after this week, nobody will hear from ever again. So, you know, it's completely unacceptable.
There's more parity than there's ever been. Every seed in this tournament has won a one, except for 16, a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. Every seed won except for a 16 seed this year in the first round. The teams that have the most veterans, those teams are doing well in the tournament. So that always helps, of course. So with these bigger programs, when they get these superstar athletes, they're one and done. That's kind of hurting them when they get to the tournament because they're playing smaller teams that have been together for a long time. So that's kind of hurting them. So mainly the parity. The parity is the main thing that sticks out to me. And it's exciting. I think it's exciting for college basketball because it gives multiple teams a chance to compete. Where in football, you only have about 4 teams that have a chance every year. So I think it's awesome.
Tucker, man, tell us what's the state of New England sports right now? Where's everybody at with everything?
You know, obviously, Boston teams are always competitive. But I think we're in a little bit of a lull as far as what we're used to in the status quo. Usually, you know, it's a championship a year in one of the 4 major sports. But I think we're going to struggle to pull it together in the next couple of years. You got, you know, like I said, I'm not the biggest hockey guy, but the Bruins are always a threat in the playoffs. I think the problem with the Bruins is just that, like, hockey's always so wide open as a sport. It's not uncommon to see the 8 seed beat the 1 seed, the 7 beat the 2. It's just one of those sports where anyone can win a series, just depending on how the play is going. The Sox, they've lost a lot of their pitching. They've pretty much gotten rid of their entire World Series roster, especially the outfield. You lost Mookie, you lost Andrew Benintendi, Jackie Bradley. I think right now, like, they might actually be playing JD Martinez in the field. We'll see what happens when the season comes around. So obviously they're putting out a lot of dollars and not getting a lot of return on it, especially based on like last year's performance. And then, I mean, one place, you know, I really want to focus on though, with our conversation, is the Patriots. Obviously we lost Tom last year. And that was, you know, a big deal for a lot of Patriots fans. I think most Patriots fans were pretty optimistic at the beginning of the season, bringing in Cam Newton. That obviously did not go so well, but they did recently re-sign him on another 1-year deal. Very interested to see if they pick up a quarterback in the draft. I think that's probably the right move for them. They've also kind of gone out and spent a lot of money in free agency this year, which is pretty uncharacteristic of them. So we'll see if that improves the team at all. Me personally, not a big fan of a lot of the signings they've made. I think they're spending a lot for, you know, middle roster players. I
got a question as far as the Patriots go. So I did notice they were signing a lot of people in free agency, spending a lot of money. But on the other end, they have Cam Newton as their quarterback. I for one, don't think Cam Newton could lead them to a Super Bowl, but it seems like they're trying to stack up. What are your thoughts as far as what they're trying to do for this season?
That's a great question. I think Bill Belichick's actually in kind of a tough seat. I'll give him what. Obviously, we're pretty hard on our sports teams when they aren't competitive. And last year, you know, I'll give him a season because he was missing half of his defense. You had a quarterback that, got COVID middle of the year in a new system that's incredibly complicated, and it's well known that's incredibly complicated. But personally, I don't really love what they're doing in terms of who they're targeting. Obviously, they re-signed Cam. It was cheap money. I'm not super worried about that, but I actually agree with you, Josh. I don't know if he can lead them to a Super Bowl. I actually don't think he can. I think most teams have figured out his game as far as running the ball goes. You've seen his yards per carry averages consistently decline year after year. And the dude just can't throw the ball. He's pretty inaccurate, and he threw, I don't see how you can play a 16-game season or a 14-game season and throw 7 touchdowns and 11 interceptions and be brought on as like a starting quarterback again. Like, that's trash. So I think that's hard to watch. I really do think that they'll pick up somebody in the draft. I think they'll get back to the playoffs, possibly as a wild card team. I think the Bills are very good. I think the Dolphins will be there. I think the Jets are the Jets, and they're always forever going to be in debate the East. But yeah, the signings, so we picked up Hunter Henry, $12.5 million a year. We picked up Jonnu Smith, $12.5 million a year. We picked up Nelson Aguilar. Like, these guys are all okay players, but none of them are Pro Bowlers, and none of them are gonna, I think, have standout seasons if Cam's throwing the ball. The one thing that was good to see, they brought back most of the offensive line. They brought back Chen Brown. They re-signed Kyle Van Noy on cheap money, who had an unsuccessful stint, I think, with just the Dolphins. I don't know if he went anywhere else in between. I think that defense will be a top 5, top 10 defense in the NFL again this year, with most of the guys they bring back. But I think the offense still struggles even with Josh McDaniels running it.
I think Cam Newton, I thought it was a mistake to bring him back. You're right, it is cheap money. I like some of the signings that they've done, specifically Jonnu Smith. I think he still can be a top-tier tight end. And in New England, in that offense, they need a tight end to succeed. So the fact that they got 2 of them in Hunter Henry, if he can even stay healthy, and Jonnu Smith, if they can stay healthy, I think those are big pickups. Specifically with Cam Newton, because they've already signed him, it doesn't matter, what we think of him. The Patriots are going to roll with him. So you should give them the benefit of the doubt, because he did have COVID. He missed a chunk of games. It was his first year in a new system with Josh McDaniel. They didn't have a full training camp because of, COVID restrictions and everything. They're getting all that this year. They're getting him on the cheap. I think this says more about Josh McDaniel than it says Belichick, because I'm sure Josh McDaniel has to have more. He sees more out of Cam Newton than what happened last year. So he had to have signed off on that. And I think it could be a good thing again, right? Because they're getting him for cheap. I don't think that they're going to draft a quarterback early. They'll probably, maybe get one in around the 3rd round. They just need a slightly above average quarterback to maintain this team and to be successful.
I think they'll be a 10-6 and 11-5 team next year. But if Belichick underperforms that next year, I think people are gonna start to understand. There's always been this argument for the better part of a decade now. Like, was it Brady or was it Belichick? Like I said, I'll give Belichick another year. But if he doesn't really show out, I think it's hard to argue that it wasn't Tom. I think a lot of people wanted to say that we could win without him. I think people underestimated how talented he is, especially for his age. I personally am a huge fan. Call me a Bucks fan now, fair weather fan. But no, I'll love Tom wherever he goes. We've talked a lot about, Cam Newton and some of the free agent signings, but they got a lot of heads in that backfield. I think Damian Harris is a really interesting young running back. But I feel like they tend to not get their full potential out of their running backs because they're always a run by committee group. I think that they probably had running backs that could be 1,200, 1,400, 100-yard rushers. But because they're handing the ball off to like Rex Burkhead and passing the ball to James White so often, and Burkhead too, guys like Sony Michel or even Damian Harris are, kind of lose some of their value because they're just not getting the touches that they deserve. I think you got to get rid of some of those heads and really focus on maybe a 1 or 2 back system where you keep one pass catching running back, which you have a great one in James White. And then kind of decide between Michelle and Damian Harris, who you want to be the guy, and get something else for the guy who's not going to be the guy.
Let's talk about the team that is relevant today with the Boston Celtics, man. Where are we at with the Celtics?
I don't know, man. Obviously, they're not playing to their potential. I think they got part of the equation right. Jaylen Brown is an extremely underrated player, and I think that's really come out this year. Him scoring like 24, 25 points a game. The one thing the Celtics can't seem to figure out is like they bring in the wrong pieces to complement their two superstars. You got Jason Tatum and you got Jaylen Brown. I think that's a 50 to 55 point a game pairing. And when you have two guys like that on your roster, you really got to let them carry the ball and do everything they can on offense. I think getting Kyrie and trading Kyrie for Kyrie when that happened, I thought that was a pretty big mistake. It just wasn't what they needed. With Tatum and Brown on your roster, you need a passing point guard, not a guy that's going to shoot the ball 20 times a game. And then they went out so that didn't work. And then they went out and they signed the same player in Kemba Walker. Kemba Walker, don't get me wrong, is a fantastic point guard, great shooter, and he's fantastic on offense, but it's proving out, right? They were pretty good last year. He's had some injuries, but he just doesn't fit. It's not a good fit for the team. I think he's the piece that you actually need to move for them to really step up and be that team that can compete for an NBA championship. I would love to see them. I know they've pushed aggressively in the past. I would love to see them push to get Andre Drummond at the trade deadline. I think that's a good fit for what they need. And, I used to hate Marcus Smart, but the last couple of years, I think he's really improved. His tenacity shows on the court. He's a great defender. So if anything, I think you could even keep Marcus Smart as a full-time starting point guard and try to find somebody, need a big man and a couple guys that can come off the bench. Obviously, they made some signings this year with Jeff Teague. And I guess Tristan Thompson. Those have gone okay. I think Tristan Thompson's playing fine. I think they'll make the playoffs. I think they'll be surprisingly pretty dormant at the trade deadline. A lot of the times they are. Maybe they'll surprise us this year. But yeah, I don't see them being able to compete with the Raptors, the Bucks, or the 76ers at this point, whereas they were actually probably more competitive with those teams last year.
And you need Tatum and you need your other guy there, Brown. You need them those are your two stars, so you need them with the ball most of the time. And Kemba, he's little, and so he's defensive liability, one. And then two, he needs the ball too much on the offensive side of the ball. I like your point of putting Smart at the point guard because he can play defense, and he's more of he doesn't need to have the ball all the time. He can move the ball, get them to your superstars' hands, and then y'all can get the offense rolling that way. So yeah, I like that idea. And yeah, I think they should probably try to do something with Kemba. I'm not exactly sure what. Maybe what were you thinking? You said you wanted Drummond. Would you be thinking of a Kemba trade for Drummond, or how would you do that?
As a Celtics fan, I'd be open to it. I think the problem is Drummond. So Drummond's been sidelined for probably the better part of a month and a half now because the Cavs have been trying so hard to move him. I don't know with the size of his contract. I don't know if the Cavs get rid of him without a buyout. But the Celtics obviously have the large trade clause from Gordon Hayward's departure. I think it's like $34 million. So they have the space to get a player like that. I'd be happy to get rid of Kemba. But the thing is, the market's going to be crap for him right now because A, he's not playing well, and B, he's probably missed the better part of this season so far, and he missed a bunch of games last year to injury. He's not healthy, so I don't know what the market is for a player like that who's honestly, I think he signed a 4 or 5 year deal right off the bat with the Celtics, so he's not even halfway through his deal yet. So someone's going to have to trade for an injury-prone player who's not paying well and pay big bucks for 3 years.
But one thing I did want to throw at you real quick, I read a report the other day that Brad Stevens he's trying to find his way out of Boston. I read multiple reports. He was trying to find his way out of Boston. He essentially tried to resign. I guess from what I'm read, they wouldn't let him. University of Indiana was looking for a head coach. They just fired Archie Miller. They were looking to bring Brad Stevens on. That was something that was in conversation. Brad Stevens, he was big in Butler, which is in Indiana. Indiana University wants him. He denied that report. I still hear that floating out there. Do you think Brad Stevens would leave?
I wouldn't be surprised if, that was something that he wanted to do. I think he's a phenomenal coach, and I think he's done really, really well with what he's had, especially early years with the Celtics. You talk about 14, 15, like making the playoffs, winning like 45 to 50 games every year with like, a bunch of rookies and like a pretty trash roster. I think he would want to leave. If I had to guess, Danny Ainge is a really influential part of that, in the sense that he's he's very active, I think, in the day-to-day, being the GM there. I don't think he lets the coach have like complete free reign of the team and in the direction of it. And if I had to guess, there's stuff that Brad Stevens has wanted to do that maybe Danny Ainge just, put a damper on. And I think, I don't know, I think Brad Stevens as a coach is frankly a generational talent. And any guy like that, you don't really want to put handcuffs on him or limit him in any sort of way. So the chance to maybe bring back IU basketball, I think that would be really, really attractive to him. And I think he might see the writing on the wall, like especially this year and with the roster they have. I think they're being close to an NBA championship. Was years prior.
I don't know. Like if you said, if he sees the writing on the wall and Indiana maybe is the best situation, which on that same topic, the NBA trade deadline is coming up. It's coming up this Thursday. There are some very attractive names out there. One we just talked about, Andre Drummond. He's looking to get out. He hasn't played for a little while. Some teams that I know that are on the market that have talked to the Cavs about getting him are the Raptors, the Mavericks, the Lakers, and the Nets.
Are the Raptors a buyer or seller? Because I've also seen things about Kyle Lowry being shipped off. I've heard the Heat pop up around Kyle Lowry's name and whatnot. So if they do that, what sense does it make to bring in someone like Drummond?
I think that's right. I mean, I think if you can keep the backcourt and the Raptors together, then maybe it makes sense. But Lowry has no interest in moving. I don't know if that means he's going to get moved. That's a really interesting point in terms of that's another person that we should definitely talk about. But as far as Drummond goes, I don't think the Nets. I mean, if the Nets pick him up, like Jesus, holy shit, that's a team.
They have everybody already. They already have everybody at that point.
And I could go on for an hour about NBA super teams and how stupid it makes the NBA. But the Lakers are interesting. LeBron just went down. They're going to be in the market for some players. I don't know if they can afford a player like Drummond, but if he gets bought out, it's a completely different story. The Mavs, I just don't see. I know the Mavs are pushing for him. I just don't see how he fits in with the Mavs. Like, you got Porzingis. Honestly, it's been rumored that Porzingis might be on his way out of Dallas too. I don't know. Maybe if you move Porzingis, then you bring in Drummond. Maybe that's part of the trade. I have no idea. But I don't know how well he fits in with that team. They've had players like him in the past, and DeAndre Jordan, and they never really won much with that kind of lineup.
If you would ask me, 2 weeks ago about the Lakers, I would have thought, they have enough. They're fine. I don't think they need to bring Drummond. LeBron's out. Anthony Davis, he has his health issues. Maybe it does make sense to bring him. And I think from what I read of the Lakers, I think they have 2 open roster spots. So they are going to bring somebody. I just don't know who. Speaking of the Raptors, we just talked about Kyle Lowry. He's on the trade market. And some teams that I'm hearing are Philly. And then I am hearing Miami, but I'm hearing Miami because he's really good friends with Jimmy Butler. If Kyle Lowry could go to Miami, man, they could do some serious damage.
Yeah, I'd agree, because Miami, they were down early in the season. They've made a push, but they're still probably like one piece away. And Kyle Lowry might be that push that could get them over the top. Going back to Drummond, though, one team that one of you guys brought up was the Mavericks. I actually think he'd be a good fit with the Mavericks. I know they've had, like you said, pieces before like DeAndre Jordan and whatnot. They were also a lot younger than now with more experience. I think actually bringing in somebody like that you could lob alley-oops to, and then you could push Porzingis out more, stretch him out to the 5 or to the 3-point line. I think that'll open things up for them, for Porzingis and for the rest of the team.
Also, a free agent to be currently is LaMarcus Aldridge. And I heard another spot where he could land once the buyout is complete is Miami. again, if they could get LaMarcus for the cheap, which they will, wherever LaMarcus is going to go, he's going to go on the cheap, and then they could trade for Lowry. That's a repeat NBA Finals team right there. Well, they would compete against Brooklyn, but that makes them a favorite.
I could see them getting to the conference finals. I don't really see anybody beating Brooklyn in the East right now. But I mean, they could maybe give them a run for their money, possibly. Who knows? So yeah, that's interesting because I heard LaMarcus is probably looking at a buyout rather than a trade, which kind of stinks for the Spurs. But
and then one name I want to throw at y'all. And this is a player that can help the Celtics. He can help the teams that I know that he can help the most are the Celtics and I think Portland, which Portland is looking to make a move with somebody. But one guy on the market right now is Lonzo Ball. He's on the market. He's a true point guard. He doesn't need to shoot the ball that much. So, talk about, being in Boston, he could help out more Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, but then I also think he could be in Portland and he could, space out more with Lillard and McCollum too. I know that would be a smaller front court there to have, or the backcourt rather, but man, I think Portland or Boston could be ideal for them. I think the Clippers also had some interest in Lonzo Ball that they might be looking to deal Pat Beverly. Because although he's great defensively, he doesn't do anything for them offensively.
Yeah.
I mean, I like the Lonzo Ball to Boston one. Now that you brought that up, I think that would be a great fit for them.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how I feel about Lonzo as a player. Obviously, going number 2, he hasn't lived up to his potential. I think he's gotten a pretty bad rap though, and maybe some of it undeserved. For me, that's an improvement over the Kemba Walker situation. Is it like my dream to sign Lonzo Ball? Probably not, but he's a big guard, very big point guard. He can pass the ball. He plays good defense. Not known as a scorer. I think he can score. He's kind of like Marcus Smart, except I would say his passing game is a little bit stronger. And yeah, just going back to, I'd love to hear your guys' perspective on the Spurs situation, just in the sense of like, I don't think that's a destination anymore. Like, and obviously there's always going to be people who want to play with Pop. I think he's probably, arguably the best coach in the NBA, but I just don't see them being in the market for superstars right now because like, what's the pull for somebody
nothing really right now until the Spurs start winning with what they have. They're definitely not. I mean, San Antonio's never a big destination for superstars because it's San Antonio, but at least when they're winning, there's something you can throw at them as far as, hey, you want to compete for a championship. They're going to have to develop these young guys and get role players, veterans that fit in with what they're trying to do and start winning that way before they're able to get any real true superstars. So basically, if they could develop a few of these young guys into all-star caliber players, put some good pieces around them, similar to kind of like what Utah's kind of doing, to where they're at least kind of competing for a championship, maybe being just a superstar way, then maybe we'll attract superstars that way. But as it is right now, of course, we're not attracting those superstars to come to San Antonio.
Yeah, we're not. And the reason small markets, they are successful and they have superstars is because they drafted them, right? Think about Oklahoma City. They drafted Durant. They drafted Westbrook. Think about, with San Antonio, we drafted Duncan, we drafted Parker, we drafted Ginobili. That's how we got big. That's how we got good. With Milwaukee, they drafted Giannis. So we, like Josh said, we have to win with what we have in order to be attractive. And also, we would argue, and we did last time, that this is one of the best coaching years that Pop has ever had before. With who he has now, because we have a ton of young people with LaMarcus that we just bought. He just bought out. He's not playing. And, with DeRozan, he's on the fence too. My guess is he probably won't return next year. I kind of like where our future's headed with Keldon Johnson, DeJounte Murray, Lonnie Sullivan. I think we are doing good.
The players have so much control over where they go and where they end up. I think it's bad for the league, frankly. And I think that's why you see the same 2 teams in the final every 5 years. And then that resets and it's a different 2 teams 5 years in a row. And it just like giving the players that much power lets them decide which teams are good and which teams are bad. And it's all about whoever has the money to bring them in. And it makes it really hard for small markets. Like, I don't care what anybody says. The Milwaukee Bucks aren't going to win an NBA championship. Like,
no, they're not.
With Giannis on their roster or not, like, They just don't have the money to bring in a super team.
It's not really a money thing, is it? Because there's a salary cap, right? But I think so. The argument will be to like the super team thing is that it's always been that way. There's always been 2 or 3 teams that have competed for a championship, and that's it in the NBA. But I thought that was the reason in the 80s why they brought in the salary cap, so we wouldn't continue to have that issue. But now it's still the same thing. We're just letting, like you said, the large market teams are just stacking up. I don't know if it's a salary cap or a money issue, or if it's just because people want to play in big markets, then really they could build their brand that way, being in big markets, because there's money from endorsements and whatnot.
And so, yeah, I mean, Tucker, you said it best. Milwaukee is never going to win. I thought it was a mistake for Giannis to sign that extension. And honestly, I think this is why this makes me appreciate the Golden State Warriors, their dynasty, a little bit more, because it was mostly all internal. Aside of Kevin Durant signing, most of it was all drafted players. So that's, it makes me appreciate that more. I never really hated Golden State. I only ever hated Kevin Durant. I didn't hate the rest of the team, right? Like, like Andre Iguodala, the Golden State Warriors got him for cheap because he was on the market. Nobody really wanted him. Like, they just got all these players that, nobody really wanted, but they also had Clay, Steph, and Draymond. What one team do you guys think have to make a move in order to be relevant this playoffs?
It's a tough question.
That's a great question. Right now, the 76ers have the best record in the East, but they haven't changed anything. The past couple of years, they basically have essentially the same core roster. Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid are not good enough of a combo to win a championship. Obviously, they've brought in some complementary pieces there, but I think that they're going to have to make a move if they want to compete with the Nets at all. I don't even know if they can. Or I think the Heat are another team that have to make a move. I think they were able to take advantage of a weaker conference last year and play great team ball and great defense, but that's just not going to be enough this year, frankly. And I think that bringing in Kyle Lowry, bringing in LaMarcus Aldridge, if you can get 2 of them, I honestly think that they could be an Eastern Conference Finals team. I think the Clippers might be one. If I had to pick one team out of the West that want to compete for an NBA championship, that they gotta do something. I don't think Kawhi and Paul George is enough. But I don't really know who they can bring in. So
my team is probably Utah. They got a really good team, really good coach. But I mean, I don't think they can do it with just Mitchell as their star. I think they need like one more star, at least an all-star caliber player to put around them.
I'll throw a name at you, Josh. I'll throw a name out there that is an all-star player that is on the trade block. I'll throw 2 of them out there. One is Bradley Beal. Oladipo's okay. That's okay. Well, then I have 3. I have Bradley Beal. We got Oladipo, but then I also have Aaron Gordon. I think one team that has to do something this year to stay relevant is the Clippers. I know they are interested in Lonzo Ball and Kyle Lowry. The problem is the price tag is too high. So most likely they're going to be targeting George Hill or Ricky Rubio, and they're probably going to give up Patrick Beverly for him. I believe if the Clippers can't get past the second round again this year, I think Paul George is out of Clippers, and I think maybe Paul George and Kawhi. I think they're going to break this whole thing up. They have to get into the conference finals for the team to need to stay together.
I think that's spot on. I think the duo, everyone thought this was going to be some dominant duo. I think Paul George is pretty overrated. He just doesn't win. You know what I mean? Like he can win in the regular season, but when it comes to playoff times, like he can't put it together and really win the big games. And we obviously know Kawhi can, so it's kind of obvious that of the two, he's probably the weaker link. Utah is definitely interesting. I'm actually going to take the other side of the table right now. I don't think that things going the way they are, them having the best record in the NBA, I don't think they're going to look to make big changes. You're right. I don't think they're going to compete for an NBA championship with their roster. I think they're going to be one of those great regular season teams that wins 65 games and does very little in the playoffs. Maybe they make the Western Conference Finals, but I don't really see that happening. So you're right in the sense that they probably do need to change up the roster a little bit to be better, but I don't think they'll actually make that move. Aaron Gordon, I don't get that. Like everyone's talking about how he's the hottest guy on the market. In my opinion, Aaron Gordon sucks. Like Aaron Gordon's been in Orlando and people are like, oh, it hasn't been the right fit, blah, 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 blah. And I think he's a decent player, but to sit here and say like Aaron Gordon is like the guy to get this year, he's a 13 point per game player and a 6 rebound. He's a glorified bench player, not an all-star. So I don't get what all this hype is about. Yeah, he can be a complimentary piece. Well, I don't even know what year he was an all-star, but his best year, he was an 18 point a game, 8 rebound a game guy. To me, that's I don't know how that's even an all-star stat line.
But like you said, this year he's averaging like 13 a game. So if he's averaging 13 a game on that roster, he can't go to a championship caliber team and be a second or third best player. I mean, he might put up 9 points a game at that rate or something like that. So yeah, I mean, I can see him maybe, like you said, as a 6, 7 man, but definitely not like a third piece to win a championship.
But yeah, we'll see how it plays out. The trade deadline is this Thursday. We'll see where they are, and I'm sure we can revisit this conversation in a week or two. Yeah. Hey, Tucker, I appreciate you coming on, man. I know we'll definitely be revisiting with you here a lot sooner than later, especially with the Red Sox season coming into full swing. No pun intended. But appreciate you coming on, man. Josh and I will be back on here soon. We'll be talking March Madness. We'll be talking about how we'll never make picks again because we're not good at this game of guessing what teams are going to win when none of them do. Like and subscribe. Let us know what teams you guys think are going to make a run this trade deadline and what teams to look out for in the second half of the NBA season. Appreciate that dude, Tucker. It's been that dude, Josh.
That's that dude, Ruben.
Don't forget, like and subscribe. Pound it. Push it.